The courtroom was a pressure cooker of emotions, and the tension was palpable. Every eye in the room was trained on the judge's bench, waiting for the next move in what had already become one of the most scrutinized court cases in modern history. Former President Donald Trump sat with a demeanor that seemed almost eerily calm, his hands folded in front of him as his legal team whispered among themselves. The world had been watching, and today was no different, but there was something different in the air. Today, the atmosphere was charged. It wasn't just a typical courtroom drama, it was a battle for everything Trump had worked for. His name was already infamous, and this trial would either solidify his legacy or shatter it. The judge, a stern, no-nonsense figure known for his cold, unwavering rulings, sat tall at his elevated position, his eyes scanning the room with an air of authority. This trial had already pushed his patience to the limit, and now, as the case neared its climax, he had just made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences for the former president. "I find that the defendant's actions constitute serious legal violations," the judge announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the courtroom. "As such, I am imposing a fine of $10 million for his actions in this case." The words hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. It wasn't just the amount, it was the nature of the fine. The former president, a man accustomed to commanding attention, was now the subject of scorn. The crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Trump, sitting at the defense table, went eerily still. His jaw tightened, his brow furrowed, his face, once an open book of defiance, now turned pale. For a moment, the room held its collective breath. And then, like the snap of a brittle branch in a storm, the silence was shattered. Trump's voice rang out, sharp and cutting. "Are you out of your mind?" he yelled, his anger boiling over in an instant. His words sliced through the courtroom like a blade. "This is ridiculous. This is a political attack. I will not stand for this." The judge, his face unreadable, tapped his gavel twice, signaling for order. "Mr. Trump, please remain silent," the judge commanded, his tone unwavering. "We will proceed as planned." But Trump was no longer concerned with decorum. His voice rose, louder and more insistent. "You've got no right to do this. This is the kind of crap that ruins lives. You think you can just destroy everything I've worked for? You're making a huge mistake, buddy." The courtroom was now in chaos. Gasps of disbelief filled the room as the former president's outburst echoed off the walls. His legal team, visibly shaken, tried to calm him down, but Trump was beyond reason. His anger consumed him, transforming him into something almost unrecognizable. The man who had once led the country was now just a furious, defiant figure, lashing out at the system he had long fought against. "Mr. Trump," the judge called sternly, "if you do not stop immediately, I will have you removed from this courtroom." Trump stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backwards with a loud crash that sent ripples through the room. His fists clenched at his sides, and his eyes burned with fury. "You think you can silence me?" he spat. "You think you can just shut me up like this? You'll regret this. I've fought tougher battles than you could ever imagine. I've dealt with far worse than anything you can throw at me. You are making the biggest mistake of your life." Security officers, standing near the back of the courtroom, exchanged uneasy glances. They began to move toward the defense table, sensing that things could escalate further. Trump's lawyer, his face pale with the horror of the moment, stepped forward, trying to speak over the rising tide of anger. "Mr. Trump, please," he urged. "Don't." But it was no use. Trump was in full-blown rage, his words cutting through the noise like a firestorm. "This whole thing is rigged," he shouted, his voice booming across the room. "You're all in on it, aren't you? The system is stacked against me and you know it. You think I'm going to sit here and take it? You're wrong. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." At this point, the judge's patience had worn thin. His expression remained stone-faced, but his next words carried the weight of finality. "I will have you removed from this courtroom, Mr. Trump. You've had your chance. Now sit down or face contempt charges." Trump stood, his back straight, his chest heaving with each labored breath. His eyes locked onto the judge, his fury palpable. In the room. "You'll see," Trump spat. "You'll see what happens when people stand up to you. I'm not going to be bullied by the likes of you. You've made a grave mistake." The tension in the room was unbearable. Everyone knew the stakes. This wasn't just another courtroom drama. This was about Trump's reputation, his legacy, and his battle against the forces he believed had always been out to get him. In this moment, he was no longer a former president. He was a man fighting for his survival, fighting against a system he believed was rigged against him. The judge, unflinching, raised his gavel once more. "Bailiff," he said, "escort Mr. Trump out of the courtroom if he does not comply." The security officers moved in, their hands placed firmly on Trump's shoulders. He didn't flinch. His eyes, locked onto the judge, were filled with defiance. It took several attempts to get him to sit down. With his back rigid and his jaw clenched, Trump finally lowered himself back into the chair. For a moment, the entire room stood still, frozen in the aftermath of the confrontation. The judge's cold gaze swept over the courtroom, and for a brief second, it seemed like time itself had paused. The judge's voice broke the silence. "This court will continue with the proceedings. If there are any further disruptions, Mr. Trump, you will be held in contempt." Trump said nothing, but his fury was far from extinguished. His lips were pressed tight together, his fists still clenched beneath the table. But he remained seated, seething with anger and pride. As the trial continued, the once unyielding atmosphere had shifted. There was a newfound tension in the air. The courtroom was now divided. Some stood in quiet support of the judge's authority, while others couldn't help but feel a sense of empathy for Trump's outburst. Was it an act of defiance or desperation? Only time would tell. Trump's explosive outburst in the courtroom wasn't just a spectacle. It was a reflection of the fierce will to survive that has defined his entire career. Whether you stand with him or against him, one thing is clear. This trial is far from over. If you were shocked by today's dramatic confrontation, like this video, share it with those who need to see it, and leave a comment below telling us what you think about Trump's reaction. Do you think his outburst will cost him the case, or will he fight back even harder? Don't forget to subscribe for more shocking courtroom moments and dramatic stories from the world's most talked about trials.